It's time to unleash the expert. What is he an expert on? Relationships, sex, spirituality, and rediscovering yourself beyond the trauma. Get ready to unleash more purpose, passion, and pleasure in your life. Here's the expert himself, Mr. Brannon Patrick.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the show. I have a special guest on today. Somebody who is my colleague professionally. I'd like to say we really grew up together
a little bit
in a lot of ways. But he's also my good friend. And something about Steve that I know is that there's some fire in there. I hope to get the fire out a little bit today, but maybe not too much.
Yeah.
But Steve is just a good man who does good things and has a ton of knowledge, ton of experience, both personal experience, professional experience about the topics that I really like to talk about, which is sexuality, spirituality, just understanding who you really are. So Steve, welcome to the show.
Thanks, man.
Good to have you.
Brannon wasn't going to out me about this, but he actually once upon a time, before we were colleagues, he was actually my therapist.
I wasn't.
He wasn't out that, but you know, back in the day, I was, you know, I'm an addict in long-term recovery. I'm 8.5 years sober, and Brannon's known me at my best, but he's also definitely known me at my worst.
Let's just say I know you really well.
really, really well.
Yes.
So,
but you know what? It's been amazing working with you in that capacity, but also it's been amazing watching you progress in your career and really becoming a leader and a voice for recovery. And I just think, you know, it's awesome when I see somebody who I've worked with almost start to exceed what I do.
Oh gosh, you're kind, man. I want to be like Brannon when I grow up. I tell him that all the time. So.
Yeah. Well, Steve, I got a topic today that that I think could really spur some discussion between the two of us, and it'll be interesting to see where our philosophies really align, and maybe where some of our philosophies differ.
Yeah.
And maybe some kind of in between there. So I want to talk about what I call the Chinese finger trap. So
cool.
The Chinese finger trap, it's, you know, it's those little things you put on your finger, you put on each finger, and what you stick them in each side. And when you try to pull it apart,
it's a no-go.
It grabs harder, and it's harder to get your fingers out.
Yeah.
Right? And this is kind of what I see in terms of sexuality, sex addiction, and recovery, especially in the rigid religious culture that we are in.
Yeah.
You take sexuality and you demonize it, and you say that it's bad. And then somebody feels like, I'm bad, I'm compulsive, I need to stop this behavior. They focus on stopping the behavior, and so they might go to treatment, they might go to a program on trying to get sober, trying to stop this behavior, which makes them focus even more on the behavior, which keeps them even more stuck in the addiction, in the behaviors that they're trying to stop.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a Chinese finger trap, where they're trying to force their way out of the thing because they know that it's bad and they know they need to stop it. They're going to church and they're hearing, don't do it, it's bad. Don't look at porn, don't masturbate, you don't lust, don't, you know, all those things are bad.
Totally.
They're setting up a bunch of systems and tools in their life to try to stop it.
Yeah.
But it almost leads to this place of force and control, which I think doesn't lend to real recovery and self-acceptance. What do you think?
No, I completely agree. And this is definitely one where I think we're in sync, and I'll just try to keep it brief because this is like a total soapbox thing for me. So like and then you and I we grew up in the same very restrictive religious culture, you know, heavily, you know, conservative Judeo-Christian. And there really was a notion as I was growing up, it was highly moralistic, right? It was all about good and bad. Right. And there was this focus on that. I remember even like growing up when I would hear from different ecclesiastical leaders who were very well meaning, you know, it was just kind of, it was like, let's talk about the new unique way in which you're going to burn in hell for all time. If this doesn't, right, if you don't change this, right? Like,
well, you got a boner.
Yes. Like,
watch out.
Like that's going to, you know, you're just, I mean, I mean, yeah, every time you ejaculate, that's like God's tears coming out. I heard that a while back. Like, it's just, it's really rough. Right. And it got very hot, heavily just, a lot of heavy religiosity. And as I was navigating my own recovery in sex addiction, that was something I really had to deal with, because me and God, like, and this from our discussions, like, we were not okay at the beginning of this process. I had tons of God trauma.
And for good reason, Steve.
Yeah.
Let's be honest.
Yeah, I'm a 2-time cancer survivor. My dad had died at a plane crash at an early age. My whole story here is not important, but there were just a lot of things that had happened where when I grew up in a culture that was highly religious, and it was like, if you do good stuff, you're blessed. If you do bad stuff, you're screwed. Like,
you're feeling like God's shitting on you.
We just got it, like, just constantly.
Yeah.
Right. My mom tells a story of when I was 13 one day, I just came up to her in tears, and I just looked at her and I said, like, why does God hate me?
Yeah.
Because he must, right?
Right.
I mean, I'm 13. We've already done all this stuff. Like, and anyway, so going back to what you were saying, this idea of good and bad, as I was trying to navigate recovery, my story is like many of the guys you and I both work with, right? Where I'd go see religious leaders. I'd talk to them about it. They'd recommend a few good things. They were really well-intentioned men who had no training and no idea what they were doing. And I'd find a little success, but it was very much, like you said, behavior focused.
Right.
We're in a religious culture where abstinence is the primary gauger, right, of recovery.
Yep.
And that sets up such an issue, because, like you said, when you don't, I had a new client come in for the first time just the other day, and I told him the same thing I tell every guy. I said, I know that you're here because of issues around sex.
Yeah.
Like no, and you're here not because you just want to better yourself. You're here because, like all of us, we come to therapy or we get help because it's like we're at the bottom of the barrel.
Right.
I'm on the brink of losing my marriage, my job, or whatever. And I said, sex for you, I know, is a problem, but sex is not your problem.
Yes.
Right. Sex is not the problem. It's a problem.
Right.
But it's not the problem. And it's
sex, the way that you're using it is a problem.
Correct.
Yes.
Exactly. Your sexuality is not the issue.
Right.
Speaking as a guy who actually did it a few times, smack himself in the testicles with a wiffle bat every time he'd act out. Like that doesn't work.
That's crazy.
I know, but that happened.
Right.
Like that really happened.
Right.
Because you get to a point where you're just like, I'm just going to chop them off.
Right.
Like, these are just getting me in trouble. Right.
Yeah, right.
Like my genitals are just, they're ruining my marriage. They make me feel terrible. Like, forget it.
My buddy asked for a priesthood blessing to stop having erections, and his dad gave him one.
Oh,
his dad gave him a blessing. He was 14.
Oh my God.
Most 14-year-olds have an erection more than they don't.
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
But yeah,
bless me to not
be
not be human.
Yeah,
bless me to not be human. Right?
Then I'll be in alignment with God.
Exactly.
If I'm not human.
Exactly.
What is that?
If I can just surrender that pesky humanity, I would be fine.
Yes.
No, absolutely. And I, over the years, as my recovery evolved, I mean, I tried to do it for everyone under the sun, right? I mean, I served a religious mission. I cobbled together enough sobriety to somehow do that. And I would relapse. I would stumble less during
Steve,
that.
I want to ask you, I want to back up a little bit.
Please go ahead.
At 13, you're already feeling like God hates me, like
Yeah.
I'm bad. You start acting out in a sexual way.
Mm-hmm.
Did that reinforce those feelings of, oh, I deserve this?
Oh my gosh. No, absolutely.
Yeah. Like you were creating the bad things happening in your life because of your sexual behavior.
Totally.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the big,
look at that shame.
Oh, and then the psychology. I mean, you remember working with me. I mean, it was just back in those, I mean, it seems like the other day, it was a decade ago, but it seems like the other day where I would just, like, every time you would act out, you and I talk about all the time how, guilt is focused on attributes. I'm a good person with attributes to work on. Shame is an identity.
Yeah.
Right. And so every time I screw up, that's just a manifestation of what a screw up.
You can't cope.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's an identity.
And so you enter this really, really weird spiral, like where you feel like you're, my business colleague at my Dare to Connect program, Mark Castleman, he calls this out. He's a chaplain, and he calls this, you feel like you're outside of Christ's circle.
Yeah.
Right. Like where it applies to everyone else,
right.
All this hope and good stuff that you learn in church, but not to me.
Yep.
I'm outside of it, right? I'm the
Yep.
exception. I'm exception to the rule. I've somehow broken the space-time continuum,
Right.
and it doesn't apply.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. I got a question emailed to me 2 weeks ago from a guy, just randomly, and he said, I don't know what to do because I'm stuck. I believe in God. I know God can heal me, but I also believe that I'm not worthy of God's help right now
Yes.
because I keep doing these sexual things. So what do
Yeah.
I do? And you can hear that outside of it's like God's not there for him.
Totally.
Because and to be honest, if I were to really dig in with him,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, but I would guess that what he's doing as a sexual being probably isn't that extreme.
Yeah.
Like he's probably masturbating. He might be
Mhm.
looking at porn. It's probably not that extreme
Yeah.
of behavior, yet that level of acting out to him
Mm-hmm.
already condemns him to say God can't be there for me.
Totally.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I was serving this religious mission. We were teaching somebody, and she was actually getting ready to join the church. And she was she had a really sketchy past. I'm going to blackball myself with all sorts of people here. We were teaching somebody we were recommended not to do, and it may not have been this. She was a former stripper.
Okay.
A couple of guys teaching a former stripper.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, but it felt right. We did. And she was a great lady, had made all these changes and was really wanting to do this. But she called us one day over, and she sat us down. She said, you know, I've done some stuff I haven't told you guys about, and that it's stuff that I just don't know if I can come back from. And she said, I don't know if I can really make this happen. And the reason why I'm sharing this with you is because it was one of those moments where you're out, where you kind of feel God, kind of inside. And
Right.
And like, it was this powerful moment where I remember telling her like all the right things, and I believed it. Right. There's nothing you've done that can't be, overcome, and God can help you change any. And it was a great discussion. And this is literally what happened in my brain simultaneously. I had one half of my brain. It's like I had not clinically, but like split personality going on. Like the one hand believed everything I was saying, and I heard a voice in my head simultaneously telling me, but this won't work for you because you're a missionary. You masturbated last week.
Oh my
and
gosh.
you should know better.
So you're saying it out loud to somebody else.
And I believed it.
And you believed it when you said it to somebody else, but it was so embedded inside of you.
I should know better.
Because you masturbated last week.
I'm the missionary with the tag on. I'm the guy who's supposed to know what he's doing. And I masturbated last week. So
God's love cannot get to you.
No.
Can't.
But it's channeling simultaneously for this person.
Right.
I mean, how messed up is that?
Yeah.
That's using pretty cool, pretty chill vernacular, but like, how screwed up is that?
I know.
And so that religious dichotomy piece, and going back to what you were saying, right, is as I was, over the years before I found sobriety, I literally, we in Dare to Connect, we talk about this all the time. I found recovery after doing it all the wrong ways. I tried everything wrong before I found the right stuff. And I tried doing it when we talk motivation for my wife, Brittany. I tried doing it for her. I tried doing it for, to feel less guilt and shame. I tried doing it for my family. I tried doing it for God.
Right.
I'm a pretty religious guy, but none of those things were ever enough.
Right.
The only thing that really helped me find traction was when I kind of got irreverent a little bit and said, you know what? Fuck all that.
Yeah.
Like, screw everyone, even your wife, even God. You got to get a little reverent and just say, what do I want?
Absolutely.
What do I want? Am I happy?
Right.
Where I am?
The religion's trying to tell me how to do it.
Yes.
Fuck that. It's not working.
Trying
to do it for my wife. Not working.
Absolutely. Right. What do I want? Do I want to be going down this road? In other words, it was a surrendering of, we got to throw out this whole playbook of right and wrong.
Yeah.
And I need to start looking at what is healthy versus toxic.
Amen, brother.
Right? Like, what is healthy for me versus what is toxic? And when I started to shift that dynamic, that's when traction actually started, right? Because it became a focus on the change, with the sobriety being more of a symptom of the change.
Right. But Steve, here's the deal. When you got to that place of surrender, and step 3 in the 12 steps is turn your will in your life over to the care of God.
Yeah.
You got to that place of surrender. You started to let go of that belief of, I need to earn God's help. I need to earn my wife's love. I need to earn these things. And you got to this place of, you know what? I'm going to allow God to help me. Like
Yes.
it's just going to be there. And now I'm going to do this. I'm going to connect. I'm going to do this. And that's when real recovery started to take place.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. No, for sure. It's ironic because you kind of have to let all of it go in order sometimes to heal those wounds a little bit. Do you know what I mean? Like, and it makes sense.
But you were letting go of control.
Yes.
You were letting go of a fear-based model of recovery, and you actually stepped into your power is what you did.
Yeah.
You said, you know what? The church tells me how to control things. I control things for my wife's sake. I try to control it even for my own sake.
Totally.
I'm letting go of control now.
Yeah.
And I'm going to step into this from a place of love and power. And
the Steve program doesn't work.
Exactly.
The Steve program
I've told you that many times.
Oh gosh. If we had a nickel for every time, I remember the first time Brannon and I met. This is hilarious. Like, if you guys can visualize this, like I remember like the first, probably like our first 10 sessions, like Brannon, he was earning his money back then with me. I think he just dread meet with me because I was a therapist at the time too. And I worked in addiction. I was actually helping guys with this. I wasn't open about it, but I was, and they were actually getting better.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And I remember, my gosh, it's so crazy. I remember the first time we sat down and I just sat on the couch for like the first 3 sessions and I hardly said a word. I just had my arms folded. And I remember in my mind thinking, and I actually think I told you this one time, I'm like, don't use your bullshit Jedi mind tricks on me. I use that crap on other people. All right. Like, I know all your stuff. Like, don't even try that nonsense with me. Right. Like,
oh, that's hilarious. I love clients like that.
Poor Brannon, man. But yeah, I mean it, but you know, as I started to make that shift and as I started to throw out that playbook, and like you said, that was the key. And that's why I'm such a big 12-step guy, is because it finally took throwing out the playbook, including my whole paradigm, right around this whole God model, and just saying, you know what? Maybe I do just have this all wrong.
Yeah.
And what I do may or may not work for other guys, but it is sure as hell not working for me.
Right.
And so I'm going to trust this other therapist and trust what I'm hearing at 12-step, because what I'm doing is just screwing me.
Yep.
You know?
I backing up a little bit, and
Totally.
I know you'll relate to this. Back in the day, a lot of the messages were, you know, if you read your scriptures and pray, then the temptations will go away.
Yes.
And really what they're saying by that is then your sexuality will go away. Right.
Totally.
Or you just need to get married and then you can have sex.
So my mission president told me word for word when I was getting ready to leave. I kid you not, he said, Elder Moore, you really just need to go home and get married. No joke. I kid you not.
Hurry and just go have sex, because then your wife's vagina will take care of all the issues.
Just get it out of your system, man. You'll be fine.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So and then also, like, leaders would get up, and I heard things like masturbation is sexual sin that's second to only murder.
Yes.
You know, like you just need to stop it. It's bad. And then so from a religious kind of cultural standpoint, those were the messages.
Totally.
And that's kind of the messages that you took on, and you tried to use those things to solve the problem. And that's what you're saying, it didn't work.
Yeah.
But then I got on under a woman named Jody as a therapist, and got trained on how to treat sex addiction. And this was a long time ago. And she would take the kind of voices of the religion and just exacerbate it, just take it. And it was all about force, condemnation. I remember one of her clients took a double take at a grocery store of a beautiful woman. And I was sitting in this group, and I remember sitting there, and she's like, "You did what? We consider that a relapse." And his deal with his wife is, you need to now go report to your wife that you relapsed. And the consequence for that is that you sleep on the concrete floor in the basement for a week. Right. And so, and him, and the reason I'm telling this story, he thought that the righteous, good, humble thing to do was to go home, tattletale to his wife, and then go sleep on that floor. And that's actually progressing him toward recovery. And the therapist who's treating sex addiction is actually making sure and enforcing that stuff like that happens.
Oh
yes.
My gosh.
See, you know this happened, right? Like this type of stuff happened
all the time. Well, and that's the problem, right? And this is the difference. A while back, I want to put it in my next book. I was thinking about this, and it just kind of came to mind. There's there's a difference between, because what we're really talking about here is a difference between compliance versus conversion,
Yeah.
right, to recovery.
Yes.
And you and I see it all the time. If there's a big enough of a caliber of metaphorical gun to a guy's head, right, and on the side of that barrel it says, marriage, or never having sex again, or loss of church membership, or whatever, right? If we make the caliber big enough,
then the white knuckle can happen.
Yeah, that's going to stop it, and we see that happen. Guys they will go sober for a week, a month,
force themselves to not be sexual. Yes,
right. But the problem is we are just creating nothing but a shame-based broken time bomb, right? That it's just going to go.
Yep.
Right? Because nothing has actually changed.
That's a great point.
In fact, it's maybe actually worse. That guy, he is now getting really good at being compelled to recovery.
Yes.
But as long as and I guess this is the meat of the topic for me, and as long as you are doing it from a place of right and wrong, not to say that those aren't good, I call them secondary reasons, because those are fine.
Sure.
But if you're not primarily rooted in what I call that healthy selfishness, right? And like, this has got to be for me, and I have to be behind it, and I have to be dialed in with what is in it for me, right? If it's not authentic for me, right, really is what we're talking about, right? I will never become converted, ever.
Right.
I'll always be stuck, and I'll be compelled.
Well, here's the thing, Steve. I would take that even a step further. To a man who does that, who uses that self-rejection and force and control, actually is feeding the actual issue inside of himself.
I agree.
He thinks the issue is the sex addiction. It's what you were saying earlier. The issue is he doesn't know himself. So when you talk about conversion to recovery, that there's a big element there of self-acceptance.
Yeah.
And I always say recovery is actually recovering something. It's recovering an understanding of who you are. And so when you're sleeping on that cement floor because your wife told you to, because you think you're a piece of shit, because you had a sexual feeling toward a woman, you are so far from stopping and saying, who am I? Am I okay? Can I be forgiven? Is this okay for me to punish myself in this way?
Yeah.
Right. So all that shame just got swirled up, and he just ate it all. And I see that happen again and again. There's another program. I don't know if you've heard about this. If they have a relapse, they have to pay double for their group therapy.
I think I know what you're talking about.
You have to pay double. Like, oh, well, did you masturbate or did you full masturbate? Because if the sperm if the sperm came out, then
that's like Pee Wee Herman's word of the day, man. A half-turbate. I'm taking that with me when I leave here today. That's awesome.
Yeah. Oh, you leaked some sperm. It's double now.
Oh my gosh, that is so funny.
That's not recovery.
No,
that's
all.
Nuts.
Not at all.
That's crazy,
right?
Yeah,
and this is a whole other topic for another time. We'll have to do this again, but like, that's the whole. I mean, that's one of the many ways in which the concept of healthy boundaries just goes crazy off the rails.
Yes,
right. Rather than boundaries being set from a place of safety and how do we encourage and foster growth and connection,
right?
It's again, what's the right caliber of gun to make him stop?
Yes,
right.
Yes, which is not a boundary.
No,
actually, that's
it's manipulation.
Force. Yes,
it's manipulation.
Right.
At the end of the day,
right.
Yes. It's just that's a we better not go there.
And your partner does it to you. Your church can do it to you. Your therapist can do it to you. You can do it to yourself.
Yes.
And the point is like there's two sides to this fence. When we say, I believe that sexual self-acceptance is very healthy and very good. What that doesn't mean is that then you can just go do whatever you want.
Correct.
Like, oh yeah, I get to go screw whoever and whatever, like all the time. No, that means that I accept my arousal template. I accept who I am as a sexual being. I know myself. And I also understand what consequences I do want in my life and what consequences I don't.
Absolutely.
And therefore, I'm not going to just go off the rails here.
Correct.
Right. But I don't need the caliber, the big gun to my head. Like, I think that we're taught at church that unless we have this fear behind our sexuality, then we're going to do horrible things.
Oh, totally.
Right.
It's totally fear driven, right?
Yeah.
Growing up. I mean,
right.
Gosh, Brittany and I have talked, my wife, Brittany, we talk about this stuff all the time. I mean, I'm just in open book, so hopefully this isn't like too uncomfortable. Brittany's
I love
with
it,
this, but like,
Steve.
I remember like Brittany and I, we abstained from sex before marriage, and we knew each other a long time. And our relationship got to a point, I mean, we'd been off and on together for 6 years before we got married. Like,
Wow, that's a long
but
time.
by the end there, man, it was like weekly.
I didn't know it was that long.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It was like weekly accountability with somebody, checking in on what we were doing. That was the only thing that kept me like, I mean, it was a miracle. But I remember we got to the day, and in my faith tradition, your faith tradition, it's like, okay, the wedding day, it's like 20 some odd years of sobriety and abstinence and change. It's all come down to this. We are driving to the hotel, downtown Salt Lake.
Talk about build up.
Yes. My wife is sobbing.
Oh.
And I'm like, that's craptastic. That's awesome. I'm sitting there driving. I'm like,
your whole life you've waited.
Yeah. I'm like, we finally got the green light, and here we are. And why? It was because she was, and we had talked about sex tons. We were not prudes by any means, but she had been told by every well-intended young women's leader how painful it was going to be.
Oh, God.
How awkward it was going to be for the first time.
So she's scared to death.
She's scared shitless.
Yeah.
That this is going to be this horrible experience.
You're driving to this hotel for her to get hurt.
Oh, geez. I try to be a nonviolent person, but I after we talked about this later, I was like, I just want to go find these people and like strap C4 to the side of their house and just set it up.
There's the Steve I know.
It's just like,
I love it.
It's just like, but and we got through it, thankfully. Like it was it's a whole story for another time, but it actually ended up being a really good thing, and it ended up being a fine night. But it was just like, these are the barriers we put in place, using fear as a way to try to curb. And honestly, I don't know how much you want to go here, but something that I would argue that just my personal opinion, gospel according to Steve, I think what we're talking about right now pisses God off just as much, if not more, than sexually acting out.
Amen.
I really do.
Oh, no question.
I think he just is up there face palming all the time, just like, oh my gosh, what are we doing here?
Well, here's the thing, Steve, and this is, you could really set me on my soapbox here. We depict Christ as like completely unsexual.
Yes.
We never talk about Christ as a sexual being. But like is it important that we are emotional beings? Yes. Spiritual beings? Yes. We're physical beings? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But for some reason, this part of us, our sexuality, we're supposed to just say that's bad. Don't do that.
Yes.
Our sexuality is what creates.
Totally.
Like talk about a God-given power.
Absolutely.
Like holy freaking crap. It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's incredible. And so I think that the adversary like wants to attack sexuality harder than anything else.
Oh yeah.
And we have bought that so much that when we even talk about Christ as a sexual being, or like sex and Christ in the same sentence, is like, oh my gosh, that's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
God is sexual. We are sexual. We're created in the image of God. And I do think that it is not okay. Just like you said, I like how you said that.
Yeah.
Yes, we're not supposed to go off the rails and just hurt people with our sexuality,
including ourselves.
Right.
But
we're also not supposed to shut it down so much and wallow in our shame around our sexuality that it creates all these other problems in our life.
No, totally. Well, I think and personally, I mean, because we're on the topic now, I mean, I strongly feel that this issue of sex addiction in all its forms, porn, whatever, I think it's one of the biggest societal issues facing us today on like a whole variety of levels, right? Objectification and not sexual and non-sexual ways. But if we talk about the psychology piece and speaking to it personally, if I'm the adversary and I'm like the general and I'm like looking for efficiency and screwing people's lives over, right? Like if I can get a person to sin, right? It's like, that's a win, and you see that like Satan would show up and talk to people and like, hey, I want you to do this. And they're like, no. And you can almost see Satan just being like, well, damn it. Why? Like, well, why not? Right. But if I'm the adversary, if I can use shame as a tactic to convince a guy that he is not worth not doing things that are destructive.
Right.
Well, what I'm creating is a self-perpetuating machine that will operate on its own.
Right. It's all disguised in righteousness.
Yes, absolutely.
It's disguised in like this is
these
right
unrealistic bars that are not
yourself.
achievable. Yeah, that are not achievable or healthy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's.
Steve, would you go as far? You got me thinking here. We see a lot of the well, actually, we see both. A lot of the destruction when somebody says, you know what, like I'm going to go have affairs, I'm going to go sleep with prostitutes, I'm going to go do those things, and obviously that doesn't work well for a healthy marriage.
Yeah.
But would you go as far to say that the sexual self-rejection destroys marriages as much as the sexual just kind of go off and do whatever.
Oh yeah, no,
you
totally.
You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely. So I've probably you've worked with even more, but I've worked with hundreds, if not coming up on close to thousands of women by this point. And it's so fascinating because like time after time when you're working with a spouse who's struggling with an addict as their partner, they will talk about, I think of one lady in particular. She just got really direct on this one day. She's like, Steve, he stepped out to go to the bathroom in the middle of our session. She said, Steve, I'm not going to lie, like the sex stuff, like it bugs me. Right. It hurts me. It does. It hurts me. Mm-hmm. It causes trauma. It hurts us. It betrays trust. Right. It does all these things. But it's two things that are going to end this marriage. One is not knowing who the hell I'm married to.
Yeah, because he hides all the time.
Because he hides all the time. And because of the emotional variability that accompanies that.
He can't be vulnerable.
Yeah. Brittany came on the Dare to Connect program the other day, and she talked about how it was like we would play like emotional Wheel of Fortune. I'd text Brittany and say like, hey, I'm on my way home from school. And it was like the music would start playing like, come on down. Which version of Steve are you going to get today? Like, happy Steve, pissed off Steve, like shameful Steve, I just masturbated Steve, let's go have sex right now, Steve. Maybe I'll get like 3 of them in one night.
Because
like
you didn't know yourself at all. You're rejecting every part of you.
Yeah, it's like simultaneous
trying to use her for your worth.
Totally. Yeah. Absolutely. Right. And it's just and there was just this, so it was that emotional variability, but then it's exactly what you're talking about, right? I was so lost. That's the real disconnector. And this lady said the same thing, and I've heard almost every woman I've worked with over the years say the same thing. That's what's going to kill this marriage.
Yeah.
The sex will get us there sometime, right? But I cannot keep being with somebody that just they never can show up for me because they don't know how to show up for them.
Right. Well, and Steve, we're not even getting into how women reject their sexuality.
Yes.
Who are raised in a rigid religious system.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the big issues I talk about all the time is for a man to step up with healthy masculinity, with confidence, with strength, with honesty, transparency.
Yeah.
And if every time they get an erection, they feel shame, or every time they're attracted to somebody, they feel that in their core, they're just disgusting and perverted and wrong.
Yeah.
How are they supposed to show up as a powerful, healthy, masculine, confident human being in a marriage?
Yeah, they never will.
It doesn't happen.
No.
Because they're constantly self-rejecting all the time. And so there's this space where they need to come to terms with, and this is taboo to say, because we're conditioned to believe that your sexuality means that once you get married, then you can engage sexually to one person, and that's all sexuality is.
Yeah.
Right. And the reality is you can stay faithful to one person. You can stay in a monogamous relationship where you're connected to one person. Your sexuality goes beyond that relationship.
Sure.
And my wife's sexuality is different than our sexuality together. My sexuality is different than our sexuality together. And the beauty of my wife and I, we can come together and we can say, this is I, and she can say, this is I. And that's beautiful. And we trust each other.
Yeah.
That's healthy sexuality. It's not, you fall into this mold of control where once a week we schedule sex, and that's what we do every week. And you don't have any attraction to anyone ever.
Yeah.
Right. And you never touch your penis, and you never do this, and you never do that. That's all fear and control.
Yeah.
Right. Do you see what I'm saying?
No, I very much see what you're saying. I mean, and we see it all the time. I mean, you were using the example earlier, right? The whole accounting for every time I was attracted to somebody.
Yeah.
We could take the rest of our time today and just talk about how destructive it is, not just for the guy, but for the partner
and the relationship.
Right. I not too long ago, maybe it was a couple months back, I had a first session with somebody and had them walk me through their couples check-in. I'm like, you guys have been doing this, so like, just do one for me. Like, I want to see it. And he, kid you not, he opened up. God bless him, because he was trying so hard.
To be honest.
Yeah.
Right.
But he went down because this is what they've done with their previous therapist. So, I'm here. These were my victories today. I was attracted, and he listed, it was some crazy. I think I was attracted between 50 and 60 women today. But I only
this is their check-in.
Yeah, but I only had like a second look at like 12 of them. But I didn't masturbate and I was just like,
does this create safety and trust in a relationship?
So she's sitting there, he's feeling all this shame, and she's sitting there reeling about what? She just lost him because of her past trauma.
Yeah.
She lost him I was attracted to 70.
Oh, she's triggered off.
The rest of it's like Charlie Brown's mom talking. It's just like, bah, 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 bah. Like she's not even hearing anything else, right? Just like, Oh
Yet
my
he thinks
gosh.
he's building trust
Totally.
by showing up that way, and he thinks he's working his recovery by showing up that way.
Absolutely.
Right?
He's giving it his all. He doesn't want to be there. It's like at the freaking firing line, but he's like, I
Yep.
come committed.
Yep.
So I'm doing it. And I'm
Yep.
like, okay, well, I know where we're starting. Let's talk
Yep.
about this today.
Well, church leaders and therapists actually encourage
Ugh,
this type of recovery and this type of behavior.
Yeah.
And I love your personal story, Steve, of you tried it this way for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And you know, God bless you for trying it, for trying to be good, trying to do it the right way.
Yeah.
That's great. At least you were able to stop and say, what are the outcomes and what are the consequences of this? Because this isn't working.
Yeah.
And I just really appreciate that not only did you discover within yourself what real recovery is, but now you're a man who's spreading real recovery and kind of scaling it out because you're an awesome therapist. You're not just a therapist. You're, like I say, you're a leader, you're an advocate. You do all kinds of good things. So
I appreciate that.
yeah.
Well, it all comes from yours truly, because that's where Brannon was the one planting those seeds back in the day. Because I was very much the guy we are talking about today, except I was the obstinate version. It was like,
I would love to have seen you sit in a session with Jody.
oh man, yeah, no kidding, right? I would love
you would
to.
have gone blows, man.
I would love to sit in a session with myself if I could, like,
Back in the
sit
day.
down with like 8.5 years ago Steve, or 10 years ago Steve. That'd have been a trip, man.
Oh, I did that.
Oh wow, we got work to do, buddy. We got work to do. I'm like, smokes. I'd probably look at you while you were watching and be like, was I really that bad? Jeez.
Yeah, well,
This guy, man, holy crap. No, how are we doing on time, man?
no, I want you to tell him, Steve, where to find you and what you got going. Talk about your program.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I run a practice called Ascension Counseling. I'm based out of American Fork, Utah. You can find more info about that at ascensioncounselingutah.com. I run a podcast myself with my business partner, Mark Castleman. It's the PBSC Squared podcast. It's Porn, Betrayal, Sex, and the Experts. There's information about that and a contact form you can reach out to me at pbscpodcast.com.
And I'll put all this in the show notes too.
Oh, perfect. And then I do run kind of a first of its kind, we'd like to think cutting edge, only one in the world that we're aware of, program called Dare to Connect. It includes, let's see, what are we up to? 30 hours of content a month. We have weekly sessions for addicts, spouses, and couples. We get raw and real, very similar to this dynamic. Mark and I, we answer questions. We have monthly topics. We have open mic sessions, and the program is it's not static. There are a few static components to it, but basically it's we come together, we learn together, we grow together. Mark is equally raw and real as I am.
Awesome.
Like, everything is on the table. Our wives come on once or twice a month to talk as well. And so it's just two addicts in long-term recovery talking about things. And we'd love to have you join us. You can find a 2-week trial for that at daretoconnectnow.com.
Awesome, Steve. It's so good to see you doing so much good. And you bring up how much time have we been going? I don't even know.
Okay.
And
I'll keep going, man. I just don't want to. I go over all the time.
We got to wrap it up. But the reason I say that is because I could talk to you forever, and this is just one topic.
Yeah.
And so Steve's going to be back.
Cool.
Hopefully again and again. So
send reviews to Brannon. Make him bring me back. I love talking with this guy.
Yeah. So
I owe him lunch. So
you guys, if this was helpful, maybe it got you thinking. Maybe you disagree with some of the things we're saying. But at any rate, if it got you thinking, then please share it. Please comment. And we'll talk to you next time. We'll see you.